Hi there. Day 5. What you see versus what you don't see. Okay. Last time I talked about weight. What you see is my weight. What you don't see is what's going on the inside. Um, it's been a lifetime of trying to figure out um, just what's going on in my body. Um, I have tried every diet. I've tried lots of things. I have exercised. I love to walk. I love to bike. I love to swim. I love to do lots of things. I would have loved to do lots more things in my life. And it just seemed like every time I tried to do things, I'd get injured, I'd get hurt, um, yeah, things just would happen. I love to play softball. I love to play volleyball. I love to play and run. I love to really be physical, and I just couldn't. It just never worked out. Every time I tried, it hurt, and I could do it for a day, and then I'd be in bed with ankle sprains, rolled ankles. I'd mess my knee up, and I have huge bruises on my knees. My shoulders would pull and pop and get strained. I'd have weird elbow things. My hip, classically, all the time popping. Just things like that. So I got really good with my hands. I can use my hands really well. I knit and I crochet. I can do a lot of things that way. Um, so early on in life, I was a pretty active kid, so my weight stayed under control. I think we figured out that later on when I moved into town and it wasn't as easy to ride a bike and processed foods were a lot more. We lived off my parents divorced, and after that time when I was living with my mom and she was a single parent, we got a lot more assistance, governmental assistance, and had a lot more processed foods available to us. And I think that's more when the weight problems started. I'm almost certain. I really noticed trouble with after that point of just not being able to lose weight with after the processed foods. It turns out now, looking back, I know. I figured out that there is a gene called MTHFR, and I have a mutation for two of. So MTHFR has multiple genes. So there's not just one MTHFR gene, there's multiples. And two are common. There's a 677 and a 1298. And I'm homozygous for both of those, which is also pretty rare. So when we talk about EDS being rare, hypermobility is not, it's more common. Um, when we talk about MTHFR, 677 and 1298, pretty common. Being homozygous for both of those, not. That's rare. Um, so what that means is I have a tendency to have a 70% reduction in how I use folate in my body. That's the nutrient that you find in dark leafy green vegetables for the most part. You can find it in meat too. So what ends up happening is if you have folic acid, that's the synthetic version of folate, it gets stuck in the receptors. And the receptors for folate there are some in your brain and there's some in your kidney. And if the folic acid gets into those receptors, it plugs it up and they can't come off of those receptors, right? You will generate new receptors eventually. And if you're still consuming folic acid, the synthetic version, it will clog them up again. And it will continue to clog them up and clog them up and clog them up as long as you're having folic, the synthetic, until you stop that, right? Okay. So back in 1996, the FDA mandated that all of our food supply flour be enriched with folic, the synthetic acid, folic acid. So I can track back to about 1996 being when my pain started to really be worse. A lot of my spine stuff being worse, a lot of my other stuff being worse. I had problems before then. I'm talking about the worsening of my condition happening with the food supply, becoming worse after that time period. Okay. So, how does this work with EDS really? Because EDS is a collagen issue. Remember that I told you that EDS is like a spectrum. Okay. So, this is on a spectrum of issues. There is some thought out there that this MTHFR gene working with the folic acid, and why is folic acid and folate important, right? Well, we take folic acid. The reason why folic acid was put into our food supply was because it is important to stop neural tube problems and help developing children not have these neural tube conditions. Okay, so it is important. You want folate, the natural. Okay, so we put it into our food supply because there was an assumption that there were portions of our society that could not get folate into their diet by eating leafy greens. So we're going to put it into the food supply. Okay, for everybody, because it's just going to be good for everybody. But we're going to put in the synthetic version because that's cheaper, easier to put into our food. Okay, so I am one of those people that cannot process it, and now it's clogged up my receptors, and it's been a compounding problem. When you go to your doctors and you start to talk about this, most of the doctors will say, yeah, we know about that, and it's not really that big of an issue. Except that if you start thinking about women's issues and pregnancy issues and miscarriages and heavy cycling issues, clotting issues, not to be TMI, it can be a factor in those things. It can be a factor in preeclampsia, which is something I had with my pregnancy. I've had miscarriages that I didn't know at the time until I had one that was confirmed, and then I knew what the other ones were. Then I knew there was a history. Then I knew what was going on. Okay? Then I understood just how much we don't know about women's bodies. Okay? So what you see on the surface is a fat person who is struggling with weight and who says they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and is just not losing weight, right? But what you don't see on the inside is a whole bunch of genetics going on that is being affected by things in our environment that we don't even know of until we do, okay? So when I started to find out about these mutations, I started to pull these things out of my diet and modify my diet just to see. Because the doctors, I'm smart enough to know when I know things and when I don't know things. And I don't want to be argumentative with my doctors, but I also want to try some things because I'm suffering here and I don't want to be suffering. So I tried to do a fix, and I thought, okay, let's run with this for like 2 months. Say I have this mutation with the MTHFR. Let's just say that it's a thing. Let's say that that's how it's going to go, and let me just experiment by pulling everything out, honestly, 100% from my diet, and let's just see. Let's just see what happens to my body. And you know what happened? All my blood work came back fabulous. All of my swelling left my body. All of my hypermobility from before came back. My brain fog went away. And I felt better. And now I didn't cure my condition. I didn't cure my EDS. I didn't fix my problems. But a large part of the whole picture of what was going on got better. To the point I could actually point to some things and say, you know what, those symptoms actually were like I didn't know that they were going to this problem. They're actually going over here to this other problem. And my neurologist was actually able to say, hey, oh, yeah, I think you do have this. This is what's going on. And I'm like, holy crap, that's been going on since I was like 10. So now I can actually connect the dots back to before all of this going on. So this is how you have to think about your food. These are the things you don't know until you just go, okay, if I treat like what else do I have? Like I've been running in this body for so long, experiencing these things, trying to live as good of advice from the doctors as I can, and their advice just isn't working anymore. And I'm starting to stack up prescription after prescription after prescription, med after med after med. And my husband is like, how many prescriptions am I picking up today? Are you we need to look through this because I think one of these is causing the problem. And, I can't say that he's wrong. We do need to make sure that one of these other ones is not causing a problem, right? Like, so let's try to step one of these things down. And we did that, and bad things happened. And like now we know that that's one that we can't step down, right? So this is what you do periodically. You go through and you check and you make sure that everything is working appropriately. You can't just stop. And then you hit the scary point where you're like, um, what what happens when my brain isn't working right? Like this is working right now. Like I can test things out now, but what happens 20 years from now when my brain isn't working like this? Like I'm taking meds at a rate that I see at end of life for other people that are much, much older than me. And you walk into a room and somebody looks at you and says, wait till you get older. And you're just like, let me see. Let me see the meds you're taking because that's like lightweight. And I say that kindly. But these are the things to think about because the first thing people tell you is like, well, check what's in your supplements, check what's here, check what's there. I am. I am. Every day. I routinely skip 3 days in a row to make sure something isn't causing symptoms or isn't causing something else. This is how I learned one of my meds was causing an estrogen dominance and was causing a bleeding problem. I learned, this is how I pull things out. And when you go to a doctor appointment after doctor appointment after doctor appointment, that's why I'm keeping my logs. This is, because there are going to be days where you just, the brain fog is so much you can't keep up with it. Okay. Be careful with everyone around you.